So let's go back to our Flash file and let's see how we can bring this file in. I'm going to Alt-Tab back to Flash, and we're already in the ActionScript window, so let's start things out by making a few changes. First of all, I want to eliminate these variables up here at the top, because this is the text that we're going to be loading in from the external file. Now if we want to keep it here for reference, I'll just comment that line out by typing // in front of it. Now we're going to be keeping all the code that creates the text file for us because we still want to have a text file to fill up. But let me just scroll down here to the bottom where we're dealing with the CSS. If you remember, we created a CSS loader and a URL request to start the process of loading in our CSS file. Once the file's loaded, our CSS loaded function gets called by the complete event handler, and we create the style sheet, parse the style sheet, and assign the style sheet to the text field. And we want to leave all that in there as well. But notice the bottom line. This is where we're taking that page content variable that we created at the top and assigning it to the HTML text of the text field. That's the part we're going to be replacing because we've just eliminated that page content variable. Now we can either delete that line, but I'm just going to comment it out so that we can save it for reference. That way you'll be able to go back to this file and know what you did. So we've just modified our file so that we have no page content, but we've got a text field and a style all ready for it. What I want to do is set up the process of just loading that welcome text file into the program and assigning it to that tContent text field. We've actually gone through most of this process already. We used a URL loader to load in our CSS file, which, if you remember, is actually text. The only thing different about CSS is we took the text and parsed it as CSS. What we're going to be reading in now is just simply text. So let's go down to the bottom and see if we can set up the loading process for our welcome text field. We're going to use the same set of objects. Our URL loader enables me to load virtually anything that I want to from a standard URL address. So I want to create a new loader object for my welcome text. Let's start things out by creating a loader for my welcome text. I'll use my var keyword to scope it to the main timeline, and I'm going to call it welcome loader. It's going to be a URL loader object just like our CSS loader. And we'll use the new keyword and the constructor in order to create it. Now we're also going to need a URL request. Remember, the URL request object allows me to specify a string that represents the path to the file we're trying to load. So, I'll use a var keyword for it as well. We'll call this welcome request. We'll type it as a URL request object and use the new keyword and the constructor for it. Now we just looked at the file we're trying to load. It's called welcome text, so we'll put that into the constructor. And now we're ready to start our loading process. Now I'm going to add one more line in here that's actually not required because it's a default, but it tells us a little bit about how this URL loader object works. I'm going to take our welcome loader and I'm going to specify a property for that loader called data format. The data format property tells the loader what kind of data it should expect. Now we've got three specific types of data that URL loaders can handle: text, binary, and variables. And the default is text. Now I'm going to go ahead and set this up even though it's a default, mainly because I want to know that it's there. We've got to type in the specific value for it, so that's going to be a URL loader data format. And we're going to be working with the text format, since our welcome text file is just plain ordinary text. Now as I said before, that's the default data format, so we could actually leave that line out and our code would work fine. Let's finish out the loading process next. I'm going to need an event handler to handle the data once it's loaded in. So let's take our welcome loader and let's add an event listener to it. We're looking for the complete event telling us that the loading process is finished, and that's in the event class, and it's called complete. And of course, we're going to be passing that event off to a function. So let's name that function right here. I'm going to call it welcome loaded. Now, of course, we're going to need to build that function. Last but not least, I want to start the loading process by using the load method. So we'll go back to our welcome loader. I'll call the load method. And we'll pass into the load method the welcome request URL request object that we created a couple lines up. So we've created our loader object. We've created a request for it. We've set up our loader object to receive text as data, set up an event listener when the load's finished, and started the load. Now let's write that complete event handler, and we can try it all out. I'll need to start that off with a function keyword, and we've already named it, so we'll call that one welcome loaded. Since it's an event handler, we'll need to have a variable to handle that event argument, EVT, and we'll type that as an event type of object. I'll type my function as void, since we're not going to be returning any values, and I'll start it off with some open and close braces. Now, just to test this all out, I'm just going to put a trace in here to see if we can access that data properly. I'll call my trace function our welcome loader. And what I'm looking for is the data, and we'll find that inside of welcome loader.data. Now let's just test our movie real quickly and make sure this is all working properly. Now you notice our text field is empty on the screen because we took away the variable and the assignment, but down here in my output window you can see that we've successfully loaded all that data from our welcome text file. So let's just go back to our action script, close out that window, and since we don't really need this trace statement, let's change this into an assignment to our tcontent text field. I'm going to set tcontent.text equal to the welcome loader data. Get rid of that extra parentheses at the end. And one more quick test. And now instead of the data being dropped down to the bottom, it's being placed right into our tcontent text field. Notice the CSS styles are still being assigned to it just like before. We're just bringing the data in from an external source instead of hard coding it as a variable into the top of our action script. So let's just close out that test window.